Hey, buddy. I love your questions. It's a little bit sort of an in-depth question with a little bit of context applied, but I'll try to give you a little bit of an explanation. That's kind of a description of what's happening as far as how the hips are moving, but not overly correct. So one of the reasons that Rory hits the ball so far is because he creates a super wide swing arc as far as how wide his arms are and how long they stay wide for. So he gets the club as far up and away from the ball in 3D as possible. And then from a sequencing perspective, he does a really good job at having the hands and the arm structure continuing to load back behind him as the hips and the lower body are starting to separate from the upper here in transition. So you see, they're not sliding forward. His pressure's moving to his front leg, but what you're seeing from this camera angle is more of his hips turning open. So if you'll notice, look at where the belt buckle is here in the kind of the middle of his hips there. And then as I go frame by frame, you can see how far that belt buckle starts to move around. And so the shifting, the rotation of that belt buckle or those hips, that whole hip complex, definitely looks like a slide per se of the hips, but it's really just part of the turn and part of getting the turn onto the kind of the front side. Notice how the lead hip and lead knee, lead ankle are kind of stacked on top of each other, and then the front of the lead shoulder kind of gets right in line there. And then as he comes through the ball, everything lines up at a really good time. So, he hits the ball really, and that's pretty typical for PGA Tour pelvic movement. But again, like why he hits it so far, he has the widest arc and a really long swing without having much breakdown of his arms, and then a lot of separation and just the purest sequencing combined with a bunch of ground force. Because you can see him, this first movement, his pelvis actually moves away from the ball, starts to turn open. Okay, see that? Away from the ball, turns open, adds anterior pelvic tilt, which is kind of belt buckle tilting toward the ground more. And that all sort of triggers some rotation in the core right above it. And you can kind of see that in the rib cage coming around right here. Okay. If we move to like the side view, you can see what I mean with the arms, and the arms are as far up and in as they can get without like overly bending the wrists and the elbows and stuff. And then as he starts down, you can see here, the pelvis goes into, starts to tilt more toward the ground as the left side moves out of the way. The left femur moves out of the way. Okay. Trail side hip is maintaining flex. The knee is regaining some flex. So you can kind of see the belt buckle's up and then it's down. There's kind of this falling and spinning part of the swing right here to start the downswing. And that's kind of when you see from the front view that left hip sort of start to look like it goes forward, but it's not just the hip sliding forward. It's just kind of the camera view of it turning open. Okay. And then he maintains that width really well. Sequence is super pure. Okay. And then he just maxes out every potential available force, area of his swing. So he maxes out the forces that he puts on the handle with his arms. He maxes out kind of the forces that he gets from the ground, and then just really transfers all that energy very well through really solid sequencing. So, yeah, hope that helps. Hope that makes sense.